Senator Ben Sasse says the hearings were a disaster for the White House. He's here with us now. Senator, why do you think it was a disaster?
Well, because some generals had to answer questions in public, and the White House couldn't get away with just trying to spin their way from one media cycle to the next with repeated lies from the podium. So what happened yesterday is that General Milley admitted this was a strategic failure, and Generals McKenzie, Austin, Miller, and Milley all agreed that there had been clear advice given to the president about the likelihood of the Afghan National Security Forces collapsing in this situation, and that they recommended leaving in troops. And the White House has repeatedly lied and said that nobody believed that. All the generals were telling him to pull all the troops out, and that was BS from the beginning.
Well, for 2 days they parsed the language of this ABC interview that's now a month and a half old. and we're trying to read minds. Just for our viewers' sake, roll soundbite number 1 from August.
No one told your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the last several years. We can do that. We can continue to do that.
No, no one said that to me that I can recall.
I don't know what you thought about that or whether or not you can get any answers out of that, but why do you think the commander-in-chief has not sought to clear this up?
It's really difficult to understand what Joe Biden is doing. There's blame to be spread out all over the place. There's lots of mistakes that were made by the Pentagon. There's obviously lots of mistakes that have been made by the State Department. But fundamentally, this falls on the commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief has lied repeatedly. He lied about what the implications would be of vacating Bagram, which is one of the biggest military blunders in U.S. history. He lied about whether or not the Taliban was going to provide safe passage to Americans to get to the airport when they had to move to the Karzai International Airport as the location of the evacuations. This is like trusting Hitler to provide security at Dunkirk. They lied about whether or not the warnings had been given by the intelligence community that this was the likely outcome, which was the collapse of our allies once we pulled all the air cover from them. They lied about the fact that they would stay until every last American was gotten out. We still don't know. We still can't get a straight answer from the State Department about how many American passport holders, how many American green card holders, how many American ally SIV holders there are. The administration really continues to treat this as a PR crisis. And so the president doesn't come out and explain the reality of the terrible harm this has done to our standing in the world, what it does to our allies as we try to stand up to the growing expansionistic threat of the Chinese Communist Party. The president doesn't want to deal with the military implications, and he doesn't want to deal with the moral implications. He views everything as a short-term PR crisis.
General Milley also was talking about how the threat to America has increased in the last 6 weeks. Watch this.
I think the ends are going to remain the same to protect the American people, but the ways and means are going to change. And I think it's going to become much more difficult now in order to conduct counterterrorism operations against a reconstituted al-Qaeda or ISIS in Afghanistan. Not impossible. We have the capabilities and means to do that, but it will be more difficult.
It's so now more difficult, sir.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously it's more difficult because the Taliban is the same group of terrorist idiots who 20 years ago allowed a huge part of their country to be ungoverned and to be given over to a group like al-Qaeda to plan the 9/11 attacks on the American homeland. And what we have now is the same Taliban back in power, but a metastasization of the number of terrorist organizations that want to now get safe haven inside the territorial boundaries of Afghanistan to plan these kinds of threats. And so when the president wanted to say this summer, I guess going back to April, he wanted some sort of weird headline that we would have no troops there, we'd have no intel on the ground by the 20th anniversary of 9/11, so that the Taliban could come back and re-establish the kind of territorial uncertainties and ungoverned spaces that would allow groups like al-Qaeda and ISIS-K to plan distant attacks. This is absolutely moronic foreign policy, and the president needs to explain what the plan he has is to actually root out these terror groups.
He's barely taking questions.
Yeah. He is obviously refusing to take questions because to date he thinks he can get away with just switching the subject to how they can bankrupt the next generation of people, and somehow that'll distract the American people from the reality of a returning terror threat.
Just one last point here, Senator. In that same comment that Milley made that we played, talked about al-Qaeda is still there. We know that. Al-Qaeda is still a threat. He said they got a shot of adrenaline through this current action. So consider that as well. Hope you come back, okay? Ben Sasse, Senator, thank you for your time.
Thank you.